during social interaction between men and women, is physical contact permitted?
This question is usually raised with regards to either dating between men and women, or in the framework of social interaction, such as meeting a person for the first time, or shaking hands, for example, and things of this nature. The first thing that needs to be stated in simple and unambiguous terms is that we, the Jewish people, have our own standards. We do not and we must not act in accordance with the standards and the notions of other peoples, other cultures, other civilizations. It is clear that according to the Torah, physical contact between men and women, not referring, of course, not including, of course, within a marriage, physical contact between men and women is not permitted. This is true when it comes to dating between men and women. This is true if we refer to shaking hands when meeting a person, for example. In all such cases, there is no question, and I do not believe there are opposing views on the subject amongst serious Talmidei Chachamim, serious Torah scholars. There is no question that the Torah perspective is that such behavior is prohibited, and as we will explain in a moment, even if in certain circumstances we could perhaps find a way of allowing or permitting such behavior, such as shaking hands, I'm referring to shaking hands here, certainly this is only b'di'avad, not l'chatchila. This is something which is possibly permissible in certain circumstances, but not because it is proper and right and desirable, but because of other considerations, as we will explain. First of all, let us lay down the simple, straightforward halacha. Rambam writes in Hilchot Isurei Biyah, Perek Kaf Aleph, chapter 21 of Hilchot Isurei Biyah, Rambam's Mishneh Torah. He writes, Kol haba al irwa minhu arayot derech evarim. If a person has sexual relations with a woman, a man with a woman, or vice versa, in any form of sexual intercourse and relationship, or shehibek v'nishek derech ta'awa, or if a person, man or woman, hugged or kissed a person of the opposite sex, derech ta'awa, this means with the intention of enjoying or receiving pleasure from such contact, وَنَهَنَبَ كِرُوف basar, and does in fact find this contact pleasant, هَرَيْزَ لَوْ كَمِنْ هَتُرَى. This action in itself, in and of itself, of even hugging or kissing a person of the opposite sex when it is inappropriate, as we explained, it's only appropriate really within the context of a marriage, such a person has violated a precept of the Torah. The pasuk that is quoted, one of the pasukim quoted here by Rambam, is the pasuk Lo tikravu leghalot erwa. Do not come close, do not do anything that brings you close even to committing a sexual offense. In other words, anything that might lead to improper sexual relations. And obviously, hugging, kissing, etc., touching one another are actions that usually in the context of a marriage, for example, leads to sexual relations. Anything which puts one on the path towards a sexual relations is also considered to be prohibited, and according to the Rambam, these things are prohibited min ha-Torah. They are against the law of the Torah. Furthermore, Rambam writes later in the same chapter, Hamnahabeka hath min ha'arayot. If a person hugs any woman who is not permitted to him sexually, she'eni bo shel adam nokefo alehem. Even though we're talking about a person, a woman, in the case of a man, if he hugs a woman who he obviously does not have any sexual desire towards. Or kissed such a woman, and this also applies in the opposite direction. If a woman does this with reference to a man towards whom she clearly does not feel any sexual attraction. Kilchon, for example, ahotho hagedola wa ahoth imo, such as a person's older sister. A normal person does not feel sexually attracted to his older sister, and therefore if he were to kiss her or hug her upon meeting her, for example, quite innocently even, you might say, and you would be right, that this is not to be interpreted as something that is likely to lead to improper sexual relations. Nevertheless, Rambam writes, Af'al pi she'en sham ta'wa wa lo hana'a kalal, even though there is clearly no sexual desire or pleasure involved, hareze meghuneh biyoter, this is something which is very unseemly. With Davar asurhu, and it is not just unseemly, Rambam says it is prohibited. In other words, here it is not prohibited perhaps from the Torah, but it is certainly prohibited it is not against the letter of the law perhaps, but it is against the spirit of the Torah law. In other words, midrabanan, according to the enactments and halachic instructions of the Chachamim, such behavior is not permissible. Uma'aseh tipshimhu, and it is the only foolish and uneducated and people lacking in wisdom act in such a way. She'en krevim la'irwa klal, a person is not allowed to in any way come close to and have physical contact with any person with whom he is not permitted to have full sexual relations. Ben gedola ben katana, whether the person is old or young, with the exception of a mother and her son and her father and his daughter. Chutz mi ha'em livna wa ha'av levito. These are the words of the Rambam, and in the Shulchan Aruch, in Ibn Ha'ezer, Siman Kaf, one will find the very same statements, largely based on the wording of the Rambam. So, whether we're talking about two people going out on a date in order to meet each other, to get to know each other, and such behavior, dating is only correct and proper if it is done with the intention of investigating and discovering whether the other person is a serious candidate for marriage, as a marriage partner. Even so, physical contact is entirely inappropriate, entirely forbidden, and it really makes no difference whether we're talking about shaking hands or hugging and kissing or anything beyond that. All forms of physical contact in such a context of meeting a person, dating, etc., is totally and completely improper and forbidden, asur. It is also worth adding that the Jewish view of sexual relations is that sexual relations are a very positive and very good thing, but only in the right context, at the right time, in the right place. And the only right time and right place for such behavior is, and it's a very natural and beneficial human behavior. The only proper place for such behavior, however, is within the context of a marriage between a man and a woman. In that context, sexual relations are a very positive, natural, healthy activity, and is to be seen in a positive light, not as some perhaps mistakenly view it as something unseemly or something that has to happen but is not really positive, something that would be perhaps better if it were not necessary. That is not the Jewish view. Sexual relations between a husband and wife are a very positive, very healthy, very natural thing, and they also serve to strengthen the bond and the relationship. And precisely for this reason, it is also asur outside the context of a marriage. The fact that many people have physical contact on different levels with all kinds of people before they get married, it is precisely that fact that is responsible for the very high divorce rate. This is one of the reasons. I'm not saying it's the only reason, but it is one of the reasons for the very high divorce rate, for the lack of true commitment and bonding between a husband and wife in many parts of many human societies, and many parts, particularly of the Western world today. With regards to shaking hands, in essence, in principle, this too is a behavior which is entirely improper. Gaon Rav Moshe Feinstein has a teshuvah on this subject in which he says as much explicitly. And that, I believe, is the bottom line, and this is also my personal practice. I recall many years ago, during a trip to Australia to visit my father, who was unwell at that time, and he was in hospital, and the doctor, a woman doctor who was dealing with his case, entered the room, and very naturally extended her hand, which is common standard practice. Of course, in her society, in terms of her culture, and what she is, the norms and the mores that she is used to. And I, without missing a beat, I did not extend my hand. I explained to her very briefly. I said, please forgive me, it is not my custom to shake hands, please don't be offended. She understood, she withdrew her hand, no hard feelings, everything was fine. And this, in my experience, is what happens in the vast majority of cases. If you explain yourself in that way, briefly, clearly, and without hesitation, any possible difficulty, social difficulty, will be overcome. However, I am aware of certain situations where some people are convinced, or pretty much convinced, that if they do not return a proffered hand, they will cause insult, and it will result in an unpleasant situation. And here I would like to mention the following story. Some years ago, I was speaking to an acquaintance, a very serious Talmid Chachamim, a Torah scholar, originally from Canada, and he told me the following, that when he was 16, he came to Yerushalayim to study in Yeshivat Kol Torah. The Rosh Yeshiva, the head of that yeshiva, was Gaon Gadol, Rabbeinu Shlomo Zalman Auerbach Zatzal. And he became quite close to Rabbi Auerbach. He used to go to his home and speak to him there. He used to walk with him, with Rabbi Auerbach, from his home to where he got on a bus to come to the yeshiva to give a shiur, and return with him. So he spent many hours with Rabbi Auerbach and asked him his opinion on many various issues. He told me that sometime after he arrived in the yeshiva, he had to return to Canada for his brother's bar mitzvah. And he went to Rabbi Auerbach and asked him the following. He said, I'm quite certain that at the event, at the bar mitzvah, there will be many women, some of them relatives of the family, some friends of the family, people invited to the simcha, to the function, who will extend their hand to me in order to shake my hand, to wish me mazal tov, etc., as is customary, as is usual in many circles. And I'm quite certain, he said to Rabbi Auerbach, that if I do not shake their hand, at least some of them will be insulted. And therefore, he asked him, what should I do? Is there a heter? Is it permissible in such a situation to shake a woman's hand? Rabbi Auerbach responded, and I should stress at this point that because this story and this information is important, and I wanted to be certain that I got all the facts straight, I spoke to this person on a second occasion, quite deliberately asked him to relate the entire story to me again, so that I would be certain that I got everything correct. Rabbi Auerbach said, obviously it is preferable, is correct, not to shake hands with a woman, as we have mentioned, for the reasons we have described. This is not in essence, normative and desirable Jewish behavior in terms of what a Torah Jew should want to, how he should want to behave and lead his life. However, he went on to add as follows. He said, I recall seeing in a certain sefer, in a certain book, and Rav Auerbach said, I do not recall the name of the book or the author, but I remember seeing in a certain sefer that if a person is in such a situation and they feel quite sure that they will cause insult to the other person in question, so let's say we're talking about a man and he meets a woman and she offers a hand, and he feels certain this will cause insult and the situation will be uncomfortable. In that situation, this person wrote that it is permissible to shake the woman's hand. And this, of course, will also apply to a woman where a man offered his hand to shake her hand. And that's all he said. He did not add to that statement. In other words, Gaon HaGadol Rabbeinu Shlomo Zalman Auerbach Zatzal felt that in such extenuating circumstances it would not be illegitimate to accept this psak halacha of this chacham, whose name I cannot tell you because Rav Auerbach also did not recall. It would not be incorrect necessarily to accept this psak halacha in such a situation where one feels that it is preferable not to cause insult, or that insult is likely to result. But in order to not cause pain, insult and injury to another person, and for the general, to further the general concept of shalom, peace and good relations between people, it would be permissible to shake the other person's hand. I am certainly not worthy to disagree with Rav Auerbach regarding this matter. If he thought that it was possible in that kind of situation, and precisely and specifically that kind of situation, not as a general rule of thumb, not because it is normal and proper and entirely correct to do so as a matter of course, but only in this kind of situation where injury, insult and lack of social cohesion is likely to result from a refusal to shake the other person's hand. If Rav Auerbach thought in this kind of situation it is legitimate, or that there is a view in the Torah world that considers it to be so, then I'm not about to disagree with that position. I would, however, stress that Rav Auerbach himself also was of the view that this is only b'di'avad. In that kind of situation, this is not normative, this is not desirable, it is not Jewish behavior. As Rambam said, all manner of contact which is not within the context of a marriage relationship between men and women is incorrect, improper. Even if it is not prohibited by the Torah, it is certainly prohibited. It is asur midivrehem. It is prohibited by rabbinic law. It is not correct Jewish behavior and is to be avoided. In these particular kinds of circumstances, on the other hand, there might be room for acting differently. My own practice has always been to gently but firmly, resolutely refuse to shake hands, but to do so in a manner which is almost certain not to cause injury. As I said before, I explain in those not very frequent situations where I may be confronted with such a reality, I explain that it is not my custom and it is not in keeping with my religious beliefs, but please do not be offended. And in my experience, this is usually sufficient, and no negative result is noticeable or present as a result of such behavior. People, on the other hand, nowadays people are quite capable, I think, of understanding that not all people follow the same social codes and norms, and therefore we should also be willing to state our position without fear. In summation, the Jewish people have their own rules, norms of behavior, standards of morality, and proper normative behavior within the context of Jewish life. We have our standards and we have our norms, and we are not the ones who should learn from others. If anything, others should learn from us.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.